Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Johnson. I am with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center with the University of South Carolina. And we are here today to discuss the Value Added Producer Grant, which is a program of the USDA Rural Development. And great program for farmers, wonderful opportunity for folks out there to grow their business. So we're excited to talk a little bit more about, how you apply and resources out there to help you with the application. So tell you a little bit about the SBDC before we get into it. If you don't already know, SBDCs, we are SBA resource partners. We offer business consulting, no charge and confidential. So it's free one-on-one business consulting. We do webinars and workshops, trainings like we're doing today, and just connect folks to resources for their small business. So we are here to help. Whether we can help you directly, we'll find you somebody that can. So the Value Added Producer Grant, we have a great slate of speakers today. And I'd like to start with some introductions. Of course, I just introduced myself, Jim, and at the end of the slide, you'll have all the contact information for all these speakers. And also, we'll be sending out this presentation and the video. So if you need to contact any of these folks, you should be able to do that afterwards. So just real short introductions. I'll hand it over to Jim Matson with Matson Consulting.
Good morning. I'm Jim Matson, Matson Consulting. We're working kind of as a grant reviewer with the VAPG. We worked with the VAPGs for, I guess, almost 25 years now since the program's initiation. So we've literally worked on hundreds of them throughout the country. And hopefully we can give you some background information so you can be successful with looking at them this morning.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. And V. Gartman with the USDA Rural Development.
Good morning, everyone. I have been 20 years with USDA and 7 years administering this program. I will be the one reviewing your application, scoring, and then sending to the national office for final competition. I am located in Walterboro, South Carolina. You can visit me, you can call me. I will be available to work with you, answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, V. Appreciate it. Next, we have Kyle Player with the South Carolina Department of Agriculture.
Hey, everyone. It's saying my video's been disabled, so sorry that y'all aren't seeing me. But my name's Kyle Player. I work at the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. I run a program. Oh, thank you, hey, Carolyn. I appreciate that. Let me start my video so y'all can see me. I run a program called ACRE, which is the Agribusiness Center for Research and Entrepreneurship, and we provide kind of help in funding, going after our grant application assistance, connecting you with a network of folks like the folks you'll hear speaking today, through two kind of grant competitions we do throughout the year. So I'm very lucky to partner with SBDC a lot. Jim Matson and V has been great in helping several of my folks get the Value Added Producer Grant. So looking forward to hearing from these experts today. You probably won't hear from me too much today as these folks are the experts, but I am here to provide any help I can. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. We also have Brian Wheat. I'm not sure Brian's on the call yet. Brian, are you there? So Brian Wheat he owns Common Joy Farm, and he is an award winner of the VAPG, a past award winner. So he has a great perspective on applying for the VAPG as an independent producer or individual producer. Also today, we don't have with us Dr. Steve Richards with Clemson Extension, but Dr. Richards is a part of the technical service, I would say, group of folks in South Carolina that help farmers apply for this grant and for a lot of other things in agriculture. So he was unable to be here today, though. So a little bit of our agenda. So we just went through the introduction. We're going to start off with what the grant does not cover. Actually, I'm going to cover a couple slides before we get to that. But Jim Matson's going to, we just want to let people know early on if this is for you or not, right? And if it's not, then this is a pretty long workshop today or webinar. So we want it to be worth your time and a value to stick around. But I'll cover a couple of slides before we get into what it does not cover. And then we're going to get into registering for SAM.gov, the UEI, going over eligibility and a VAPG presentation, short break, and then back to how these are scored and putting together budgets and timelines, and then having that panel at the end. But like I mentioned in the beginning, when we get, to breaks kind of in between here, we'll check the chat for questions and try to answer those immediately if we can. So put your questions in chat, and then we'll definitely review them and get to them. So I'll start with this first slide, and thanks. I have to thank Jim Matson for providing this presentation for us to go over. But this is kind of a little intro to VAPG and if it's right for you, and then we're going to lead into, if it's not right for you too, right? But you must be a farmer or producer with a commodity currently in production. So it's got to be something that you already do. It's not a new crop that you want to introduce necessarily. Must be producing a majority of the commodity. And there's going to be some repetition in this presentation, but repetition is good. That's how people learn. You have to hear it 2, 3, 4 times before you remember it, right? So it's good, and you hear some repetition. But yeah, you need to be producing the majority of the product that you're applying for. The crop. It's only for value-added projects, and you'll learn in this webinar what a value-added project is. It does not cover production costs. This is a big part of it, and you're about to hear this from Jim again, that this is for post-harvest activities. This is not, you can't get a tractor. You can't get, anything production related. You must provide a match. You got to provide a match. Grant funds are reimbursed. These are two big kind of things that people don't think about when they hear it. They hear grant and they're like, oh, okay, they're going to give us the money. No, you have to make the expenditure, send in the receipt, and get reimbursed. And and it's a matching grant, so a cost share. And it's going to take a substantial time commitment to apply. So it's not a 2-page application. It's pretty substantial. You'll see everything you have to go through to apply throughout this webinar. So just keep that in mind. The big thing is introduction to VAPG. What is how much does the PAG cover? Well, it's up to $250,000 for the working capital project, and it's up to $75,000 for a planning project. And we'll get a little into that a little bit more later. These dates are wrong, but I do believe the available funding is about 33 million. Or how much is it, V?
About 33 million. Yes.
Yep, about 33 million. But that application due date is incorrect. That application due date should be April 16th. April 16th.
Yeah.
So April 16th. So today is February 15th. So you have 2 months. And this is probably you need 60 days. It's a good time to get started. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till the last week, because you won't get it done. If you wait till the last week, this is a good time to really, start moving on it. And of course, we've got 2 different products here. You have a planning grant, which is up to $75,000, which you can use those funds to create a business plan, a feasibility study, marketing plan, or other types of research and planning activities. The funds that come through the planning grant don't go directly to the farm. Those funds have to be used to hire a third party that is going to write these plans for you, and do this research or do the feasibility study, right? And there are various third parties out there that do these activities, such as Matson Consulting and a number of others. Clemson Extension may do some of this, but usually they're free, so you don't pay for them, I don't think. But anyway, that's the big thing with planning. It's to create that plan, that business plan, feasibility study, whatnot. And then what most people are interested in, a lot of times the planning is good for you if you're, starting up, under 2 years in operation. You really want to get a comprehensive plan leading into the next year where you can apply for the VAPG working capital grant. But what most people are interested in is that working capital grant that you can use in your operation for processing costs, marketing expenses, salary expenses, inventory expenses, operational, and non-farm operating expenses. Which leads us into what's not allowed. So Jim, I'll click through these slides for you.
Sure, appreciate it.
As
Yeah,
you
and starting off with things, so the value added producer grant, we're gonna say the producer part of it is one of the key things you have to be, because if you're not the person that's in charge or filing the taxes with the product, then you're not the producer. So it is, it has to be part of your business, it has to be part of that ownership of that business or family business that's happening within there on that. And you also have to be doing the commodity, which is the crop that you're growing in the background. If you want to be doing the working capital one, typically, if you don't want to go through hoops, you need to be doing that for 2 years. There is a smaller grant that lets you be more of a startup, but it's really, you have to focus on the fact that you can be for that entity of what you're doing, but it doesn't cover any trucks, any tractors, any buildings, or any equipment under this, which is, always the first thing that people want to have covered, but you just can't, it doesn't cover any of that. So again, I'm going to say it doesn't cover tracks, tractors, trucks, equipment, any of those areas with it, because those are the first things people walk in the door wanting to look for. It only covers activities that are, value added activities after it reaches the sort of the storage area. So if you're bringing in vegetables, it can cover activities that are coming from post when it makes it to the storage area within there. If you're talking about like animals and slaughter, it's after you take the animals to slaughter with that. So once the cow has been cut up into chunks of meat. So nothing on the production or the farm side at all within there. You also can't do maintenance or repairs or any of that for equipment. And again, and this is to reiterate, it doesn't cover anything on the farm side itself. So no seed, no farming supplies, no field bins, no trailers to harvest with. None of that is covered under that activity. So people always try to look for edges of that and things to do, but it really is very specific that it has to be on that value added side of the facility within there. The other thing that you can't pay for is any family labor. And I know these are lots of family farms and people are looking often for dollars to help to have, someone, quit a job, part-time job to be able to spend more time on the farm, but you can't pay a family member. Now you can pay salary for workers that aren't related to you. Now you can use your salary as match for the grant. So family members can use what they're being paid as part of the match required for the grant. And one of the things that this grant does require is you have to put skin in the game. And so currently it's a 50% match. So for every dollar you get from the federal side, you do have to put $1 up on your own. But you can't take any draw for yourself within there. And again, I'm beating this over the head, but why? Because people always come back and do this. And again, none of that labor can be done with planting or harvesting. So if you have a person working for you that is your farm manager and they're helping you at the farmer's market, you can only pay their part of the salary that would be helping to sell the product at the farmer's market. That would be considered sort of that value added activity. and people ask kind of what is it then, what is this value added side that you're paying for? Value added is any activity that's getting you directly in the food supply chain beyond just growing it. So it could be farmers markets, it could be processing the food, it could be, like I say, getting your animals slaughtered to sell yourself. But any of those activities, one of the eligibility areas is local food. So it's you directly being involved in selling local food within 400 miles of your house. So that's one of the activities for the foodborne ones. And then, of course, there's a lot of things that you can cover, marketing expenses, processing supplies, gloves, anything that's involved in worker safety in the processing side, masks, gloves, cleaners, sanitizers, any non-family expenses on the processing, selling, and marketing of the product are eligible. So you can pay for a market plan, you can pay for driving to the farmer's market, you can pay for driving and marketing at the restaurants, the expense of that for it. If you're doing it yourself as the owner, you can't pay for your time. That could possibly be part of the match, but you can pay for the expense of driving to those things. So, those are the type of activity that covers. You also can't cover any activities not directly related to the crop in which you're doing. Yeah. So if you're, and I'll put the example, if you're running a local agritourism thing, you can't print T-shirts with the farm's name under it, under the grant. You could have shirts for the workers to wear if they're required to wear wear shirts around the farm. That's part of the expense of doing the operation. So it gets down into very nuanced on some of these things, but really you want to focus on it being, activities directly tied to trying to sell, market, process the thing that you're doing. And I'll put an example of some of the things you could do, if you're, and I'll use the example of an easy one with a winery, because it's easy to talk about. You can't pay for the grapes, you can't pay for the bin, you can't pay for any of that, but you can pay for wine casks, you can pay for bottles, you can pay for corks, you can pay for labels, you can pay for, the cost of the web page that's marketing the product. Similar if you're doing, fruit and veggies, you can pay for packaging those fruit and veggies, you can pay for chopping up and making a mix, you can pay for canning them, you can pay for bottling them, you can pay for having somebody deliver them for you. So I want to just give some real specific examples of some things that it might cover out there.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So now we've heard, what's not eligible. So I did see in the chat we had a couple questions that were answered. One was, is a nonprofit eligible? And the answer is no, unless that nonprofit is a part of a cooperative. I didn't see any other questions in the chat right directly, but if you have any questions about ineligibility, now's the time to put them in there. Okay, no questions there. All right, we'll move on, but continue. If something just comes to mind, put it in there, and we'll be glad to get back to it. So another big part and kind of the next step of is eligibility, right? But before I get into eligibility, now that you've heard, a little bit about, the project, and that you think it's for you, right? We're 60 days until the application is due. One of the first things you need to do is get a UEI number, a unique entity identifier, at sam.gov. Many of you might already have your UEI, which is great. So that's one, check that box. That's one less thing you'll have to do. But if you do not have your UEI, now's the time to go ahead and register for that. And what I wanted to do was just show this video quickly on how to register for the UEI, because the UEI number in sam.gov, SAM stands for System of Awards, or Systems. It's an award administration system for
System of Award Management.
System of award management. There you go. For the federal government. So essentially, that's how you're going to get paid. You'll put your account number in there, your bank account information, and that's how you're literally paid. But let me move this over here. Let's see. And I'm going to play this video.
Welcome to this video walkthrough of getting
Hey, Jim, I can't hear it.
Neither can I, Jim.
Yeah, we
Jim-
heard the very beginning and then it
Yeah.
stopped.
I think when you muted it.
the
How about that?
Identity ID from SAM validates your organization.
Yes.
Got it now.
Trust.
So you have to keep your
verification that your organization
mic on.
is what you say it is. An entity registration allows your organization the opportunity to receive a contract or assistance directly from the federal government, not from another contractor or awardee. You need to register your entity in SAM.gov when you want to bid on federal contracts as a prime contractor or seek federal assistance as a prime awardee. Entity registrations include getting the unique entity ID, SAM, and require assertions, representations and certifications, and other information about your business. Some organizations that do business with the federal government, such as subawardees, do not directly bid on contracts or apply for assistance and may not need to complete an entity registration. There may be other situations where a federal agency directs you to get a unique entity ID from SAM or fully register in SAM.gov. If you have an entity registration in SAM.gov today, active or inactive, you are all set. Your unique entity ID from SAM was already assigned to you. You can view it now by signing into SAM.gov and locating your entity registration record in your workspace or in an entity search. If you do not have an entity registration in SAM.gov, but you do need to get a unique entity ID from SAM, we will walk you through the steps to request it now. Have the following information ready to request your unique entity ID. Your legal business name, the physical address of your business, including your zip code +4, and a SAM.gov user account. You can set up a SAM.gov user account quickly. Select Sign In from the upper right corner of the SAM.gov homepage and accept the government terms. Login.gov manages usernames and passwords for SAM.gov. If you already have a Login.gov account, you can connect your SAM.gov account to it by signing in here. If you do not have a Login.gov account, select Create an Account and then follow the instructions. When you have your account set up and all of your information available, sign in to SAM.gov. When you sign in from the SAM.gov homepage, you will be navigated to your workspace. On the Entity Management widget, select the Get Started button to begin your request for your unique entity ID, SAM. You can also start the Get Unique Entity ID from SAM request from the homepage. Select Get Started on the homepage, and then select Get Started once again from the current page. Here you will have two choices. You can get a unique entity ID from SAM only, or you can start an entity registration. Remember, you do not need to register your entity to get a unique entity ID for SAM. However, if you do register your entity, you will be assigned a unique entity ID SAM during that process. Since you have determined that you only need the unique entity ID for SAM, select Get Unique Entity ID. Enter the information that you gathered, your legal business name, and the physical address of your business, including your zip code +4. When you are ready, select Next. On this page, you will confirm that your organization's information is correct. If the system is unable to locate your correct entity information, select Create Incident to get help from the Federal Service Desk. You also have the option to restrict the public search of your information. If you uncheck this box, only you and federal government users will be able to search and view your entity information. Now that you have confirmed your information, you can select Received Unique Entity ID to be assigned the Unique Entity ID for SAM. But first, you must check the box certifying that you are authorized to conduct transactions on behalf of the entity. Congratulations! You have gotten your Unique Entity ID from SAM. SAM.gov will send you an email confirmation with your Unique Entity ID. If all you needed was the Unique Entity ID from SAM, then you are done. If you need to view your Unique Entity ID from SAM in the future, or if you just need to update your organization's information, sign into SAM.gov and go to the Entity Management widget in your workspace. Thank you for joining us for another video. Remember, you can search the Federal Service Desk knowledge base for additional videos.
Okay, I thought that was an instructive video. I've worked with a lot of folks who kind of get stumbled on getting the UEI. Some folks will go and they'll register to get a username, but there's kind of a two-step process as you saw. You have to register to get onto SAM, and then you have to register the entity, which is another step. I guess another thing to mention about the UEI is in SAM.gov in general is it's a free registration. It shouldn't cost, that won't cost you anything. You go directly to SAM.gov and go through those steps that were just shown. There are companies out there that will charge you, to do this, but they're just going to ask you the information that you can just enter yourself by going through the process. It's free. So no need to pay anybody to do any of that. And there's also technical service that can help you. I mean, SAM.gov folks can help you. SBDC has folks that could help you step through the process if you have issues. Yeah, and one other thing to mention about SAM.gov are once you register in SAM.gov, you may get emails. Don't ever respond to an email. Just go into SAM.gov and into the system and see if there's an update that's needed because you get all types of scam emails and people trying to charge you money and things like that.
And be sure you register with SAM.gov because usually it is not the top search. Companies pay to have a higher location on the search site. So SAM.gov is often the second or third locations if you do a Google search for it. Even typing SAM.gov being a federal one can't pay. So it will be the second or third one. And you have these companies, and some of these companies are good, and some of these companies are pretty close to scams.
Yep, exactly. So that's the UEI. I did look in the chat and saw some questions regarding eligibility. So,
and I was also going to say when you register, it can take a week or two for your UEI to show up. So you definitely don't want to wait to the end, or you will not have one by the time you get your application done and in time to turn your application in.
Yes, good advice. Good advice. Don't wait too late. Now's the time to do it, for sure. So I'm gonna jump into eligibility here, and there were some more eligibility questions, but after I go through this, hopefully, that might answer some of those questions. I know V's been answering questions in the chat, so thanks, V. So applicant eligibility, and this has come up already. You need to currently produce and own more than 50% of the commodity used for the value-added product. So you need to be producing that commodity. And you don't necessarily need to be the one adding the value. You can contract with a third party. So for instance, if you're making jam, you need to be growing the strawberries that go into the jam, but you don't necessarily have to make the jam. Maybe you send your strawberries to a third party who makes the jam. But you do need to be growing the commodity. You need to own the product through the production of the value product to the sale, to the consumer, to the final sale. I guess in some cases, if there's a break in the chain, and you're just producing, can you speak more of that, V? Owning the product through the.
I was going to say the example that you did with your jam thing.
Yeah.
You can have somebody else process the jam for you, but you can't just be selling your fruit to them to process. So it has to come back to you in that case. So
Right.
it's going to
There
third
you
party.
go. Okay.
You
there
have
you
to
go.
maintain that ownership that you're doing it.
Yeah, you can use the third party to process, but it has to come back to you. You make the sale.
That's correct.
You couldn't sell it to the third party, then they turn around and sell it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's a good example then. You need to be involved in the day-to-day labor, management, and operations of the farm. So you have to be farming. I think that question might have come up, what is farming? That means that you're involved. Provide documentation as proof of ownership and eligibility. So you have to show that you own the farm, and that can be done in multiple ways, proof of ownership. So there's 4 eligible applicant types. You can be an independent producer, which I think most of the applications are independent producers. This is a sole owner or multiple owners, 100% agricultural producers. This is a farm. This is what they're doing. This is all they're doing. You can be an agricultural producer group, a nonprofit membership group, majority of members, board, or independent producers. So I guess if it's a nonprofit membership group, then the majority of the board members have to be producers. Is that different than just being the nonprofit, V?
What I was told by DC that that after this they will have to basically create a company. So even they are like few producers, then they will have to become a
Like an
the
LLC?
company, right? Yeah, LLC.
Okay.
That's correct. Is this correct, Jim, or do you have something else to add?
Oh no, I think that's it. You can apply, but in order to receive the funding, you have to be a
Right.
legal entity.
Yeah, yeah.
So you probably wouldn't see this applicant type as much. Then you have farmer and rancher cooperatives, legally incorporated or identified by the state as a cooperative, and also majority control producer-based businesses. This is where the majority ownership held by independent producers is held by independent producers. I believe some of these applicant types, there's a set, or not a set aside, but only a small percent of awards would go to some of these applicant types. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that 10% goes to the co-ops, cooperatives, and majority control producer-based businesses, but it's a very small percentage. Correct, Jim? I think we never had any applications from majority control producer-based businesses, so I kind of didn't follow that.
Right. But I'd probably say most applications are independent producers.
Yeah,
And
there's a
probably-
there's a 10% set aside for that. But
Yeah.
So the following are common value-added methods. So now we're going to talk about a few methods that you can use. One is change in physical state. This is an irreversible process. So fruit to wine, milk into butter, livestock into packaged meat, and strawberries into jam, like we mentioned in the first example. So this is a change in state. So this is an eligible method that can be used. Also, you have another method that it's eligible is locally produced agricultural food product. So you may not do any, jams or wines or anything like that with your products. But if you're selling your product locally, it's a locally grown and sold product within 400 miles of your farm, or in the state in which it's produced, then it's considered locally produced, which is a value added. That's a value add. Generally speaking, you can get more for a locally grown tomato than you can, just for a red round tomato in the grocery store, right? So the value is added by the fact that it's local. So that's another method, a value add, and then produced in a manner that enhances the value, basically, different from standard production. And an example of that is organic. So if you're certified organic, that's a value add. You can get more money from a tomato that's certified organic than one that's not certified organic. So anything that's going to add value there. Some less common methods, but that are still eligible. Physical segregation, separated from from standard commodity, like genetically modified corn. Jim, you want to expand on that one?
It's not used very often.
Yeah.
Would be the one that I would say it, but it is something. It has to be through the entire production process was segregated and, doesn't interact with other methods.
Yeah. And lastly, farm-based renewable energy, commodity used to generate energy for use by the applicant, a dairy manure into methane, and corn to biodiesel. So these are not projects we normally see. And there are other products out there that cover this too, that may be better suited for this type of project. So then we have types of working capital applications. The first type is emerging market application. This is where you focus on a new product and or new geographic or demographic markets. And when they say new, that means that you have supplied the product or market for less than 2 years. You have to have, like in the beginning, you have to have sold the product. But if it's less than 2 years, it may be an emerging market. It's also required for agricultural producer group, farmer or rancher cooperatives, and majority control producer group, optional for independent producers, and requires both product-specific feasibility study and business plan. So that would make emerging market applications a little less attractive, I would think, because if you have to have a feasibility study, then that's a pretty intensive process that you're likely to have to pay for. So it may be, if you wanted an emerging market, you might go for the planning grant first to get the feasibility study, and then the next year, go for an emerging market application. But there are other types of applications, like market expansion, which is probably what we see mostly. It's the market expansion application. It's only available to independent producers, and it's for value-added products sold for at least 2 years. You need to have sold it for at least 2 years. Must focus on sales to new customers. So it can't be to your current customer market. You need to show an expansion. So right now, let's just say that you're going to 2 farmers markets. Well, you need to say, okay, I'm serving these 2 farmers markets, but I want to add a 3rd farmers market, and maybe I want to start a mobile farmers market that's going to go to X, Y, and Z communities. So these are going to be serving new customers, right? And you're expanding the market. It can't be taking your existing market, and expanding it like those 2 farmers markets you already serve. Those are customers that you already serve. You must submit a business plan or marketing plan for the product and markets. So there are some, we'll talk about some exemptions to this, but generally speaking, you're going to have that business or marketing plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the slideshow here. and needs new customers and increase revenues. So you got to show how many new customers that you project that you're going to receive. And as a result of these new customers, you should be making more money, right? Higher revenues. So you need to show that as well. There's a third type of application here. It's called the simplified application. These are for projects requesting less than $50,000 in grant funds. And again, $50,000 in grant funds is a $100,000 project. So 100,000, 50%, match, it's 50,000. So with these simplified applications, you don't need the business plan or the feasibility study. So those are exempt from simplified applications because they're smaller applications. But outside of that, all the requirements are pretty much the same. You're still going to have to, write, for like it was a $250,000 grant request.
And they're
Other
scored
than-
on the same, they're scored on the same scale as the larger projects.
Yep,
Get
still
no
scored on the
advantage
same
in-
scale.
You get no advantage in scoring.
Right. No advantage for scoring on that one either. It's just the main things you don't have the business plan. But to me, it's like, you're writing the business plan to help write the narrative of, the grant too. So, but that's not required there. Also, if I'm not mistaken, can you apply for simplified if you've been in operation for less than 2 years?
That can be the advantage.
Right.
Yeah.
So some, people that have started up maybe in the last year, or it's under 2 years since you started your farm. And if you're wondering what if a farm start is, you need to show that you had a tax return, Schedule F, right? That is the documentation that proves that you've been farming, right? So you've had income and expenses and you filed a tax return. So now you're establishing that you were in business as a farm. So it's been less than 2 years. That's the benefit of going for the small grant if you wanted to. So simplified's a good alternative for some folks just starting out. All right, so matching funds. We went through eligibility. I hope that answers some of the questions on eligibility. There was a question about federally recognized tribes. Are they eligible? Jim, what would you
Tribe
say?
business are eligible if they're tribally operated. So yeah, if they're tribally owned and operated, that counts under the program as a for-profit.
Okay, thank you. There was another question on, is converting my plant material into biochar eligible?
If you're selling it for electricity, it could possibly be, but again, it's that value added side part of it that counts, and that's why there's not a whole lot of the energy ones within there. And
Right.
a similar one with the compost thing. It's not the mushroom compost, but if you're selling the mushroom compost, then the marketing side of that could count. The marketing and bagging and other activities to do the from the compost.
Okay, great. Thank you. And eligibility can be tricky, but what you can do is we're going to give you the information for all the resource contacts at the end. So by reaching out to one of us or to V at the USDA, we can help step you through eligibility to make sure that
And again, if you have a question, doing it ahead of time does, because V can send it through to the national office and they can answer, so it can be clear and there won't be any surprises for anyone.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Because people come up with new great. I've been doing it for 25 years, and every cycle people come up with new questions that I don't know the answer to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
You'll
it's
probably answer about 95% of them, but there's just 5% that pop up. And then we have to, or V has to maybe send it to Washington to get the answer.
and if you're in doubt, you want to do that, because you don't want to put all this time in the grant and come back and find out they declared it eligible.
Exactly. Because you saw on one of the first slides, it says you're going to have to commit 70 plus hours probably to writing this and getting all the documentation. So it's not a light lift, but as you can see, it's a very valuable program if, you know, you can bring $250,000 of grant funds into your operation. That can be amazing. And South Carolina has done a wonderful job of, you know, getting a lot of producers funded. I think
Thanks for
several
your work.
years in a row, we were the top state in the
Yeah,
number
more
of
than 100 so far since 2018.
yeah, so we've had over 100
Right. And I think
VAPG
last year
funded.
we were second only to California.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we're
and
almost
the
we're
last
getting as many funded as California.
Yeah, and the year before we were number one. We beat California. So
Yeah, I think year before last we beat California, and last year we were
yeah,
second to California. So there's a great team of folks trying to help farmers in South Carolina, you know, get these funds to South Carolina. So it's good, great program, but it's a you know, it's a partnership. So the producer needs to be heavily involved in writing this application as well. So matching funds, we had a question come up in the chat about matching funds, which I'm about to go through. So hopefully this might answer some of those questions. So what are matching funds? They're cost sharing requirements in order to apply for the grant. And if you've been in farming long enough, you're probably familiar with the cost share model. It's pretty popular in agriculture. VAPG applicants require a dollar for dollar match to request the funds. So for working capital projects requesting $250,000 in grant funds, you'll have a total budget of $500,000. So it'll be a $500,000 project where $250,000 is the grant and $250,000 is your match. Planning projects requesting $75,000 will have a total budget of $150,000. So you've got the 50% match there. And lastly, a simplified project that's requesting $49,000 will have a total budget of $98,000. So just shows you that there's going to have to be a 50% match on the applicant's side. So what can those matches be? This is a popular question because you're going to need to show that you have this match in advance. You know, before the application or when the applications turn in, before awards are given, right? So a couple different ways you can do it. The most, I guess, effective way is a cash match. And I say effective because you would get more points through a cash match, and Jim Matson's going to go through scoring shortly. But you can do a cash match, and that can just come from your savings account, your checking account. It has to be in the owner's name, right? It can come from retirement accounts, a line of credit from the bank, a loan from the bank, and third-party cash that's put up. No, so cash is put up by a third party, and they're pledging, I guess, the cash of the project. That's not one we see very much of. But you can also, if you don't have, let's just say you have a $500,000 project, you need to come up with a $250,000 match, but you don't have $250,000 cash, you know, in the combination of all those methods. Well, you can also offer in-kind match. An in-kind match can be labor, and that can be the owner or employee's time toward the eligible activities that are not billed to the project. And it could also be inventory of inventory of product, or it could be donated products or services. And this in-kind match, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but the term of this grant is over a 3-year period. Or it's up to a 3-year period, but most people, you want to put 3 years, just in case, you know, you want to have the longest period of time to spend money as possible. So you have, and when you're doing the in-kind match, you're looking at the contribution that you can make over a 3-year period. So whether that's labor, inventory, or other here, you know, over a 3-year period. It gets a little bit more complex with in-kind matches, you know, on the back end. So the ideal method is cash, and you will receive the most points for a cash match, but not everybody can do that. And that's why they give you the accommodation of allowing for in-kind matches, which is nice. And many of our many of the folks that we've worked with have gotten the grant with in-kind matches in the past. And it's definitely a method for getting there.
Yeah, you lose a couple points on the application, but again, if that's what you need to get to the funding, that may be, you know, that may be the way to accomplish it.
Yep. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into scoring. But that's one that when you talk to kind of like barriers to applying for VAPG, match is usually one of the barriers that pops up. And you just have to kind of figure it. Sometimes you can just cut back the project too, right? So you don't have to do 250,000 or a $500,000 project. You can cut it back and do a $200,000 project, $100,000 grant. So, you know, just come up with some strategies, different ways to approach applying if you're a little restricted, maybe. So some grant writing basics. Everybody on this call has written this grant multiple times, and you know, in grant writing basics, you know, just keep it clear and concise when you're writing. Answer all the questions. That's pretty important. And if you look at how the grant toolkit or the grant application is structured, you know, each section kind of outlines a question that you're answering, and it's structured in multiple parts. So you just want to ensure that you're answering every question within, or every section within that question, so that there's nothing left, I guess, unanswered. That'll be a quick way that a reviewer could, you know, mark off points is because you didn't answer one of the questions that it explicitly states, you know, in the section. So, you know, you're going through this, you're writing, you have a draft. You know, remember in school when you wrote your term papers or a report, hopefully, if you were a good student, you wrote it and you revised it multiple times before you turned it in for the final grade, right? Some people would wait the last minute, write it, and they're turning a draft in basically, and usually they might get a C or something like that on the term paper or the report, you know. But if you went through the process of revising it 1, 2, 3 times with input from your teachers and stuff like that, and it's been edited and whatnot, then you have a much better final product that is an A+ paper, which is what you're shooting for the value added producer grant, right? You want an A. So, because only the A's are going to win these grants, basically. B's, you might miss the cutoff. If you're lucky, you might make it, but you need a real good proposal. It is competitive. I think only 30% of 30% of the total applications are awarded. Is that right, V?
Well, it really depends on how much funds they had. Like a couple
Right.
years ago, when they had 77 million, everybody who scored 50 got funded. Last year, they had over 500 applications. I believe about 350 were eligible, and out of that, I think 180 were awarded. So it's kind of like, and then depends also on
50%.
the size of the grant, right? Because if everyone applies for 250,000, then they will be able to award less applications. But you know, if you have some smaller grants, then they will be able to award more applicants.
So basically, a lot of those were thrown out that just weren't even eligible. Sounds like about 20%.
Right, and this is basically right, and this is basically up to the states. They're supposed to kind of weed out those ineligible and do not even send them. But
Right. So that shows you the importance of getting a complete application that's
right,
eligible. So
right,
you know that at least you're going to make that first cut. So
that's correct.
20% were thrown out for eligibility, then you make that cut, and then your chances are 50-50 versus maybe a lot less. So
And
So,
even
yeah.
if you, Jimmy, even if you are, if you do not get funded, once you're eligible, they will provide us the results of their scoring. So you will use this as a guide to improve your application next time. So I think it's, you know, it's worth it to submit application, even if you don't get funded the first time, you will have a chance to improve next time.
Okay. Thank you, V. So more on the grant writing basics. You're going to need to provide support for your project, and you will see, we'll get a little bit more into that, support letters. If you've been in the grant world before, you may have heard of support letters. But you need to show that there are people out there interested in your project, customers, you know, other resource providers in your helping you with the project and whatnot. But we'll go a little bit more into that. You need to show that support, and also attach all documents. There are going to be many documents that go along with this, just the general application, that you'll have to attach and submit. So those are some basics. Again, what is required? You need the UEI. You need your EIN. If you submitted your UEI with your EIN, then you need to put your EIN on the application. Is that right, V? You brought up a issue with EINs before that you saw. Oh, you're on mute, I think, V. Or
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I was trying to answer, typing the answer. What's your question?
the EIN, you have come across some issues with the EIN in the past.
Oh, yes, yes. So if you register your farm in the SAM, System for Words Management, and you use EIN number, so please put this EIN number on your application, the federal form SF-424. Because once I register you and then I have to use the same number to check, it will not match. Use the number that you use to register your farm in the SAMS, in the System for Words Management. If you use Social Security number, then on your application, please use Social Security number.
And if you are a sole proprietor using your Social Security number, and you're filing a tax return, I mean, you should get an EIN. There's no reason for you really not to have an EIN, because you don't have to use your Social Security number on documents and let people see that. EIN is basically your Social Security number for your business, right? It's free, and you don't have to give out your private information like your Social Security number whenever you get your EIN. So just make sure all that stuff matches. Also, the application can be paper or electronic. So they're still accepting paper this year, V?
So say again.
They're still accepting paper applications this year, right?
Yes, this is the last year when they are accepting paper applications. Those will have to be sent to me. I do encourage, do not, or discourage everyone to submit your application online, because once you submit to me, and if you submit early, I will be able to advise you, review, so you will have time to make corrections. Next year, I believe the national office said that they are going to implement a new system where everyone will have to write application online, and those will be submitted directly to the national office. So I will not even see those applications until they are submitted, and then I will be able to retrieve those from their website.
Thanks, V. A few more things that are required are all the requested attachments, and we can send a toolkit out if you don't already have one. I think V could send one to you as well. The toolkit also comes with in a zip file with all the other federal forms that are required. But when it says requested attachment, that also includes letters of support and other documents, supporting documents. Federal forms, business and marketing plan feasibility study should be attached if required. Again, we went over the UEI. It's always free. Takes maybe an hour to apply. So, and also don't wait till the last minute because there might be some holdups on it. So writing your application, you can use the template provided by the USDA, which is what I just mentioned with the toolkit. And answer all the questions, as I said earlier, under the basics of grant writing. Fill in all the blanks and check all the boxes that apply. Don't leave any blanks. It'll be thrown out. But if you're using, you know, a resource provider and other folks, we can look over that for you. Jim Matson reviews, I review, and Steve Richards from Clemson reviews. So we can kind of see if you what you've missed too. Keep your writing focused on the specific project. Focus on the identified priorities of the program. You know, you might do a lot of different things on your farm, but you want to talk about the specific project, right? So if the project has to do with, you know, growing strawberries for jam, you don't want to talk about, you know, the peppers that you're growing for, you know, some other type of project. You know, it's mostly about just what you're trying to achieve. Explain your project in logical steps and reference support documents and attachments. So within the body of the grant, when you're writing it, you're going to put your business plan as attachment under Appendix C. And when you're writing it, you can refer back to that business plan or other documents that you attach. So that they can go and, you know, when they get to that section, they'll go to that document and look at it. It's just good grant writing practices that are supporting the claims in the narrative that you're writing. And any type of publicity that you might have on the farm, you know, third parties that talk about your farm and your capacity and your credibility, you know, those are good things to attach. And also when you're writing the grant, referring to them somehow to give that credibility to your application. It just supports it, makes it stronger. Again, edit, conduct multiple rounds of edits, check for the voice and tone, opportunities for concision. I guess that's being precise. And use correct formatting in your margins, your line spacing, the style and the page limits. So yeah, I mean, it just says a lot to the reviewer when things are formatted. You know, it just doesn't look right. You know, you have small font, large font, you know, it gives an overall, I guess, feel that, you know, if they didn't pay attention to detail like that, maybe they don't pay attention to detail in their operations. So just, you want to have all that right. Supporting documents. So let's talk about some of the supporting documents. You'll need articles of organization if you have an LLC or you have a corporation. This is to prove, you know, the existence of the LLC and that you are the owner of the LLC. Letter of good standing from the State Corporation Commission, which that's the South Carolina Secretary of State. And you can get that information on their website. Tax forms such as your Schedule F and others to show farm income. So you need to have been farming, right, for at least 2 years if you're doing something other than the simplified grant. But you need to be farming, and to show that or document that, use your Schedule F. Or it may be another tax form if you're a corporation. You need a lease agreement, certifications, and other documents specific to your operation. These are required as proof of grant eligibility. So you can claim that you're eligible, but in this grant, you need to back that up with documentation. And these are the methods that you can use to show that, you know, you're eligible, you're in business, you've made income, so forth and so on. You control the land that you farm on. Excerpts from research articles and websites to support your claims are good. So if you've come up with a concept, and just like a research paper that I mentioned in the beginning, it's kind of like writing a research paper. You know, if you can find articles that are supporting maybe trends in the market of people who want to, you know, buy your product, and the fact that it's growing, so that can result in, if you go into that particular project, increasing revenues, right? And so there's research in this article saying that, for example, if you are growing strawberries and turning it into jam, maybe there's an article about, you know, how that benefits farms and how that increases revenues on farms, but a third party wrote it. You know, so that'd be a good example of, you know, research articles, also websites that support your claims, any type of third party thing that kind of can support what you're doing. Maybe it's your website or other that refer to your website somehow. The business plan, marketing plan, and feasibility study, you'll need that if applicable. Letters of support or commitment. And get these together ahead of time. So don't wait till the last minute. In my experience with a lot of working with a lot of growers is they wait till the last minute to get the letters of support, and they don't get them, you know, so then you get points knocked off, which you'll see in the scoring section if you don't have all the letters of support. And also, you need a quality letter of support. I wouldn't just do a template and send it out to people and have them just sign it, because these are reviewed by the reviewers as well. So they might refer to your letter of support and, oh, they're all exactly the same. It's just like a templated thing. It doesn't specifically say what you're doing with that particular supporter. So they all need to be individual. They should be quality letters of support or commitment, and get them way ahead of time. And also, you really can't complete the narrative of the grant without letters of support, because there is a section in the grant application where you need to write a narrative about these supporters, right? And if you haven't gotten the letter, then how can you can't really write about them until you get that. I guess you could write about them, but it would help if you had the letter. So yeah, get them way ahead of time, because it'll help you, you know, move forward in writing the grant. These letters of support and commitment are required. And one is producer support, and these are other farmers involved and are benefiting from the project. For example, farmers who will provide additional commodities or inputs. So if you happen to be working with another producer, and in this grant, you can buy that commodity. You have to produce at least 51% of the project, but 49% of the commodity can come from another farm. And we've seen this is popular among maybe livestock, cattle, or beef and pork. You know, you're buying from another farm, but any commodity really, you can. You know, the idea of buying it from another farm is that through this grant, it's a marketing grant. You hope to increase your revenues. So that means that to increase revenues, you need to increase your production. And sometimes the sales scale up faster than you can produce. So the idea is, hey, I can buy it from another farm until I can scale up my production to meet the demand that I'm going to create from this grant. Also, end user support commitments, customers stating a desire or intent to purchase your product. Contracts show strong commitment. So yeah, you need to get letters from somebody saying, from a new market, remember, a new market, not an existing market, a new market, that's saying, hey, I'm interested in buying your product. And if there's, contractual, type of agreement going on, those are pretty strong, because it shows a strong commitment to the sale transaction, almost a guarantee, right? I guess it would be a contractual guarantee. So third party support, all others involved in supporting the project, community organizations, distributors, processors, folks, those stakeholders that kind of surround you, support you in your project, in your operation. And again, these take time, because if you send somebody a request to write you a support letter, some people are really good, they get it back to you in a day or two. Other people, you have to keep after them, and eventually they get it back to you. So start early. You can pre-write templates with specifics about your relationship to provide to the supporters. It's just, I wouldn't use the exact same template for everybody. They still need to be very specific or detailed to the supporter. Set a due date for your letters and follow up often. Say, hey, can you write this letter for me and get it to me by Friday? And if they don't get it to you by Friday, or maybe Thursday, you call them. Are you going to have it ready? Or if they don't get it by Friday, keep calling them. So that's just how it goes. Use other forms of documentation to show support. Again, if there was a newspaper or magazine article written on you, you want to attach that. Social media comments, if you have a large following, survey results, customer comment cards, all to show credibility of the farm, which leads to the reviewer, seeing a sustainable business that's going to be successful, in operating the grant and receiving and a good steward of the funds. Because in the end, the USDA wants to see that people they award are successful, and that they're doing good things with this money and they're growing, right? So these help show that, better chance of success. And so mention some of these federal forms. Like I said, these will come out. We'll send these out to everybody, and all these forms will be attached in a zip file, which is just basic, federal forms that you'll have to fill out. Also, in writing your business plan, a couple of resources include SBDC and Clemson Extension, Agribusiness. Steve Richards and I have worked with folks in writing and reviewing business plans. Jim Matson can review business plans and for these projects. And I would highly recommend having them reviewed. It's helpful. And you've got free resources there to help. There's also paid consultants that you can hire to do the work, professionals, and they're well worth the investment because they're dedicating all their time and their professional experience into getting these written and giving you the highest chance to get awarded. And there's several out there that you can choose from for this. And getting into business plans, I'll quickly go through this. Don't want to spend too much time in the business plan outline, but the outline is basically you have an executive summary, description of the business, farm business, products and services that you're selling, how you market it and sell those products. Marketing is various ways to do that. The pricing of your products, financing, what's the financial position of your company, kind of projections, what would you see, your company doing today and over the next 2-3 years. And also another thing, when we get into the budget, which V will go over later, there needs to be a projection of, what your company, how your company will perform financially without the grant, and how your company will perform financially with the grant. So hopefully, when you project, with the additional funds, that you're going to show a lot more growth and a lot more net income, which is the ultimate goal, right? And then you can, reinvest that income into the business and further growth, and hopefully pay yourself more in the end too, right? And also there's, and then the appendix of a business plan typically has the income statement, balance sheet, projections, resumes, and management skills of the owners and the employees, and any supporting documentation, for that. I'm not going to go too much into feasibility studies. This is a comprehensive analysis of capabilities of the project and a business conducted by the third party. It has to be a third party that independent from you that performs this feasibility study. And generally speaking, you're gonna have to pay somebody to do it because it's so comprehensive that like folks like Clemson or other universities might not do it. and usually universities are free. The extension sources or resources are free for the most part. But, feasibility is a big undertaking. So for the most part, this is going to be referred to a third party you're going to have to pay for to do this. And, I think initially you just decide if you need the feasibility study, and then those are the steps you want to take. Then you start exploring different folks that can help you with that. So, summary here, and then we'll get to some questions and answers in a break. Plan ahead. So we got 60 days. So now's the time to start planning on what you want your project to be, and the other aspects of eligibility and understanding, if your project works. Develop, strengthen beneficial partnerships, like the resource partners that you have online here and other folks that you can hire or bring into, the project, and develop steps to accomplish the grant. You can see there's a lot you have to do. I mean, there's the writing of the grant, there's the letters of the support, there's getting the matching funds documentation together, there's getting the other documentation together, there's having the grant reviewed, and there's editing and revising. So you have all these steps. So having like a timeline and deadlines for this to happen is helpful. Follow instructions for submitting the proposals. If you don't follow instructions, then grants are thrown out in the end, right? Hopefully you've gone through, folks that help review and that doesn't happen, but, that's what happens with those 20% or so that got thrown out, nationally speaking. Hopefully none of the South Carolina ones would. I don't think we do, because generally we do a good job of, making sure that they're eligible at least. And then, of course, edit, and good luck. So, we'll get to questions here. I guess before I get to questions, Brian Wheat, are you on? Brian sent me a text, but hey, Brian. Okay. So I did want to, before we get to answering some of these questions, I want to give Brian a chance to speak. Brian Wheat owns Common Joy Farm, and Brian was an awardee, a past awardee of the VAPG. And so Brian has an interesting perspective as a farmer, and having received the award, and also managed the award, the actual sending in receipts, getting reimbursed, kind of the whole spectrum of the whole thing. So Brian, you want to give us about 5 minutes or so of your experience with VAPG?
Love calling if you need help. Hey Jim, sorry, I need 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it shows up on
All right, Brian is traveling, so he's got some other things going on, but he was kind enough to drop in and give us his perspective. Yeah, one question that came up in chat, and thank you, Jim Matson and V, for answering a lot of these questions in chat. Does the program have priority products or points, I guess?
Hey Jim, sorry about that.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, sorry about that. I missed a bit of the introduction, but yes, for those who are on the call, I've been a recipient of this grant, and it's a fantastic opportunity. As Jim has kind of alluded to, and I know the others do during the meeting, it's an extensive application, and so the folks on the call are really important resources to you all for executing on that. I think the best piece of advice is to get started now. It takes a lot more time than you imagine it would, and even if you have that help and those lifelines, it still takes quite a bit of time to put together a really solid application. So it's worthwhile to get started now. And going ahead and, like Jim said, getting those letters ahead of time, is really important. It takes some turnaround time to get those back from people, and having them be of a high degree of quality, I think is important. And maybe you might even need to bounce it back to one of your customers or other farm partners to make some edits to it. But that's something that does take a bit of time, and being very thorough when you go through and connecting all points in between. The business plan and the marketing plans have been talked about quite a bit. It's very useful to connect to that, just like in a research paper, like Jim was saying. So making sure you go over this with a fine tooth comb a number of times, and it all takes a lot of time. So, Jim, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of missed the introduction. Is there
That's
anything
okay.
specific you'd
Yeah,
like me to?
well, I guess one question is, how did the VAPG benefit your farm?
Well, I will say, and I've worked with a couple others. I was a colleague of Jim's for a while, and worked with the other folks on the team. So I've written a couple others as well, and they've had similar experiences in being awarded the grant. But really, I would say, in my business is Common Joy loofah. We grow loofah. We're one of the only loofah farms in the United States, or very few of them that grow it commercially. And we entered into a new market, and I would say that without this grant, we really wouldn't exist, to be honest with you. Without the grant and the help of the Department of Ag and Small Business Development Center and Clemson, we really wouldn't be in business. It's allowed us to scale up in ways that we definitely would not have been able to do on our own. It's really like a capital injection or a fundraising opportunity. Honestly, it's like you were awarded money on Shark Tank, and in fact, in a lot of instances, this is more money than people give away on Shark Tank, and without requesting any equity in your business. So we get to still own everything, and you'll laugh. It's true though, right?
Yeah.
So it's helped us immensely to scale up, and we're able to hire people where we would not have been able to before. We're able to put some necessary money into marketing efforts in a way that we wouldn't have been able to before, in terms of strengthening the brand and building a brand across multiple platforms. It's just stuff you wouldn't be able to do on your own, or if you were trying to fund it yourself, at least in my case. So I think it's been invaluable in the growth and development of our business. It's allowed us to expand into a lot of different markets around the state and country. So it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for farms, and I hope everybody on the call receives some funds through it.
Well, thank you, Brian. I know that you only have a limited amount of time, so we'll let you go. And we're going to put Brian's information, contact information, when we send the stuff out as well. So Brian's very collaborative, and so feel free to reach out to him and ask him about his experiences as well.
Please do, Jim. I do appreciate that, and I also will share this. Once anybody does get the grant, I've worked with folks post grant, as someone with the grant, to sort of help them navigate that, which can also be a little bit daunting. So it's thinking quite far ahead. But if you get the grant, you have to get your money back through the USDA, and requesting that can sometimes be difficult. I've worked with other farms on doing that. So if folks on the call do get the grant and they need help with that, I'm available for that as well.
Okay, thanks, Brian, and we'll let you go.
All righty, Jim. Thank you. I
appreciate it.
do appreciate the time, and good luck to everybody.
Okay, take care. That's a little, I guess, testimonial from Brian and his farm and experience with VAPG. And like V said, we've had about 100 since 2018. So a lot of good stories out there about how great this program is for local farmers in South Carolina. I'll go ahead and answer a couple questions, and then we'll take a break. A lot of these were answered in the chat. So might work on, getting these answers out to folks as well. in the follow-up report. But one question was, is there priority points? And yes, I think you get 5 bonus points for being new beginning farmer, veteran farmer, socially disadvantaged, smaller or medium-sized farm, those are some of the categories where you can get 5 bonus points, which are very helpful for sure, because you need every point you can get in the grant, because it is competitive. So, and all those categories are on the grant application. You can see where you can get the priority points. So how many support letters are suggested? It lays that out in the grant. It'll say you need a minimum of X amount of support letters to receive the maximum amount of points. And we are going to go over points after the break. So yeah, there are a certain amount of letters that you need to get. And let's see, can I mix the financial support half in kind, half cash? Does cash match need to be for all now, or does it give way to monthly receipts? Yeah, you can contribute at least 25%. If you contribute, V said you get 2 points if you contribute at least 25% cash match. And so what she's saying is that I guess the more cash match, the more points. I think max points are 4 points for
4
just
points,
100% cash match. And then if it was 25% cash match, which is 25% of the project, or 50% of, I guess, the matching, that'd be 2 points. So, and we'll get into a little bit more of that in scoring as well. Is there a place for animal fiber processing in VAPG? Jim or V, animal fiber?
Sure.
Yep. So it doesn't have to be a food that you eat.
But you have to be doing a transformation with that.
Yeah, with the fiber, it has to be
You
some
have to
type.
be doing a change of state somehow. So doing something with the fiber. But it's all about the scoring and what happens within there. And at the end of the day, this is what matters. And I will say that last year you needed just about 70 points to win on the grant. And there are about 90 points available. So there's not a whole lot to give up and to get there, but a lot of it's getting clear and answering the questions with there. And let's bounce on to the next slide if we can, Jim. There. So, try to do the reviewer's job, make it easy for them, answer the question they're asking for that section. And it is it feels repetitive when you're answering the question. And I will say that part of what happens too, and what I see with people on their first time doing an application, is there's a whole lot on the application that is just on eligibility. And the scoring section doesn't start to section 6.2 of the application. And what I see a lot of times is people are answering the questions for the eligibility section, and by the time they get to the scoring section, they feel like they've answered all this before, and they throw up their hands in disgust. So really focus on it and know that you're working on that, but know that there's a lot of work that just goes into answering the eligibility questions even before you get to scoring. So like I said, you're not till you get to section 6 are you even looking at the scoring points. So, but make it easier on the reviewer, answer that question. A lot of the things we talked about on the business plan, bring in that information before, does it make sense? Are you able to accomplish what you're doing? Are you proving what you're able to do? If you're talking about selling for a particular price, can you show that that price is achievable for you? If there's a market, that's where those letters of support have a lot more value than just getting them for that one section. It's showing that you have the ability to accomplish it. And have you thought out things in a logical task? Lay out your timeline, lay out where you're going. Also, and V's going to bring this up again on the budget, but lay out where you're getting items from. If you're going to be buying labels, show that you have a place that you can buy them from. add a picture of them to your application of the place you're going to buy it from and put that in the appendix. The other thing is, how can you accomplish this? What makes your product unique? You know, what is the moat around what you're trying to do that's going to make the reviewer want to be on your side for the application? So that's kind of one of those things in the background of, you know, tell that story and really focus on the project area you're working on the grant. You know, there's a lot of other things taking place in the farm, a lot of other places taking place in business in the country. This is not the place to talk about that. You know, really focus on the value-added activity that you're doing for the grant. And you may have a farm that's doing, you know, dairy, beef, pigs, you know, generating electricity. But whichever activity you're doing for the grant, that's what you need to be talking about in the grant. So, next slide, please. Okay, like I said again, starting from 6.2 forward is where things are scored to the end of the grant. When you look at the template, you see that. The other thing is reviewers have been told that they only have to score what's in that section. So if you've repeated something, you feel like they're asking the same question or asking something pretty close, you may want to put it back in that section again, particularly if you put it in the eligibility section. The reviewers don't have to flip back and look for it elsewhere in the application. No, they can if they choose to, but like I say, making sure that you have it and you're answering that question with that. And each of the sections of the grant has subcategories. And my suggestion is that when filling out the template, break it up into the subcategories of each of the questions they're asking, because they're asking 3 or 4 questions under each of the points. And so break it up and divide into each of those points so you can show the reviewer that you've answered each of those subcategories. And here's where the points are coming in. And this is sort of the core of what the points are in the grant with the next slide here. Looking at the thing. So here are your 90 points. And I'll spend a little more time on this one, but the nature of the proposed venture is who are you and why can it work? You know, this is really also why can you do this? How can you do the project? You know, is it profitable? And will it be sustainable beyond the project? So things that I want to talk about for the nature of the venture is you really want to lay out a timeline and show what can you do? How can you accomplish it? Do you have the equipment on your farm? You know, do you have the trucks needed? Do you have the marketplace to sell it? All these things. What are the risks that you could undergo? But also, if you have a risk, what have you done to mitigate that risk? You know, what can you do to lessen the chance of it not working? Also, lay out from your business plan or from your projections what you think the profitability could be and include the profitability difference with the grant as opposed to not with the grant. You know, you really want to show that you're getting a return from people investing in your project. Jim mentioned the Shark Tank. You know, if you think about a little bit on this project and the reviewer, then they're kind of the Shark Tank person to decide, do they want to fund you or not? And then also, will the project be sustainable beyond the length of the grant? That's a big one for the reviewers. And it's one that they really want to look at to say, you know, what's going to happen when grant funds run out? So make sure you're paying for things that are going to help you grow to the next level. And that will show really how the project will work and how they'll be happy they invested in your project beyond the grant and will help you get points. Also, within the categories, you want to lay out as many of these details as you can because there's sort of a scale that the reviewers have for each of these categories. And basically, you want to kind of be in that excellent part of the scale showing that, you know, it seems like definitely you're going to be able to accomplish it and you've addressed all these criteria. So you just don't want to hit some of these areas. You want to be sure that you're addressing each of these. So again, my suggestion is you divide the grant up and you talk about technical feasibility as a small heading. You talk about the operational feasibility. You talk about profitability. And you make sure you have these headings so the reviewers know you've mentioned each of these when you do the grant. Now, under qualification of personnel, these are people who are going to work on the grant, you may want to mention the people who are working on your farm here on the farm side, but make sure that you say that the farm activities will not be paid for out of the grant, so that the reviewer doesn't get controlled on that. And this is the people you're going to have who are going to be doing your job. And even if you're going to be hiring new people, put in a job description. If you may not know who the person is that you're going to hire, if you're going to use grant funds to hire somebody, but put a job description saying, you know, what they would do for you in the future and who they would do. Also, what's the timeline of when people are going to work for you? Are they going to be working full-time, part-time? What are they going to do? You know, you're going to be talking about what you're paying them later in the budget, so it may be good to link that together as well. And then also what I always like with qualification of personnel is to put some of the other people who you're working with who may not be direct employees, but they're part of your team. So your lawyer, your accountant, are you working with an extension agent? You know, is Jim Johnson there to help you out as an advisor? You know, who are these people that are in your greater team that you're working with who can help to advise you to talk about what makes sense, you know, on this? You know, if you're doing, and I said wineries before, but if you're doing a winery, do you have a winemaker that comes in and advises you? So who are this greater team? Be sure to include those as well. And again, that helps to show that you're not just out by yourself, you know, being Don Quixote flailing at windmills. So really show that, and that will help you get more points on that. Jim spent a lot of time on letters of commitment. And so for commitments and support, you know, that is where that's coming in. That is where these letters are dropped in. You can see it can be up to 10 points from various levels of, do you have more, you know, are there more producers involved? Sign contracts that say they're interested perhaps in buying the product. And somebody asks, who is third party? And so those third party ones about, you know, people who are involved in your project but may not be directly affected in it. And I know the hardware store, you know, will you be buying things from other suppliers, or will you be buying things from other people? And part of the area is, you know, for commitments for producers, you know, it may be if you're doing a beef project, you may be growing your own cows, but are you bringing in grain or, you know, hay or something from other producers? They're involved in the supply chain that can help you get more points. And those are the type of letters you want. So you want letters from these producers, end users, and third parties. And Jim spent a lot of time on this, so I don't want to go too much into it. But you want to show how they're involved in the project to get the points. You don't want one from a congressman just saying, hey, I think that having businesses in our region is a good thing. That won't get you points. You really need people that are directly involved. So, you know, people in the community that show the impacts, people that show the job you could be hiring, other things. But the more strength you can have in these, the more you get your points. You're only required a couple of letters from each one as a minimum. Somebody asked how many letters to have. We often like to have about 10 in total, broken up between all three of these categories. Just in case, because that works out as well, because in case a reviewer, for whatever reason, doesn't like one of your letters, it's always good to have a backup of somebody else that shows it. And also, I feel like this is one area that the reviewers really focus on higher than its points. So if they see that you have good documented commitment and support, I think it helps them to want to give you more points on, hey, can they be successful? Does it make sense on this economic sustainability? Because this is the only place in the application where other people are saying that you could be successful. So I really encourage this, and this is one that I think often becomes the deciding point. And on the opposite side, I will say with people that we've worked with, you know, even last year we had, you know, someone we worked with who got a 69.2 and was not funded because they only got one third-party letter of support. So you don't want to leave those points on the table because, again, you know, if you can only possibly get 90 points and 10 of them are in this area. If you lose 2 or 3 points here, you really, you start to get in that area where it's dubious if you can be funded or not. Work plan and budget. And V's going to spend more time on this, but this is just later, so I'm not going to spend too much on it. What your grant is going to be working on, and a breakdown of details about what you're going to buy and what you're going to spend the money on, and have it make sense. These reviewers are looking at a lot of your grants, but a lot of these reviewers have done this for a lot of years. They smell bullshit pretty well. So if you're trying to just throw things together and throw it in, you may get away with it, but it is a place that you often can get caught on. The other thing I would say is double check your math to make sure it adds up. If reviewers find out that your math is not working, they tend to be pretty harsh on taking away points. So, and just small things within there. So you want to make sure that everything is right in that section and just is copacetic on it. And then priority administrative points. And I think we did have a question about that from the
I think Jim's internet is going in and out. There was a Hey Jim, your internet was going out a little bit. So
okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I gotta say, do you want to do the priority points with there or the work plan? You want to click on the next slide for the priority points within there?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. I'll review this. I know you're a little bit under the weather too with your voice. So
yeah, well, part of it is, I'm still recovering from COVID, so
okay.
my voice is also going in and out a little bit. But the priority points are, and you can get one of these categories for the priority points. So you can begin a beginning farmer or rancher, which is that you have a tax return that shows you haven't been a farmer for one of the last 10 years. You can be a veteran, which you have to have basically the appropriate discharge papers from the federal government on that. Socially disadvantaged is a self-declared category of standard. On this one, it's a minority. It can also be female for this category within there. Mid-tier, I'm going to jump over because most people aren't doing that as a specific one, but it's sort of, and then, small and medium-sized farm structured as a family farm is a farm that can show they have an average of less than $1 million of gross sales over the last 3 years. So you have to include tax forms within there. And then the farmer rancher cooperatives is I think that's pretty self-eligible there. But so you have to show that, for socially disadvantaged farmer, again, it depends on the ownership of the business, not the number of people. So there's 5 points there for each of these categories, but you only get to get one of them. So you get 5 points total in the grant out of this. And it doesn't matter which one you have. If you happen to be a black veteran farmer with only $100,000 a year sales, you can pick one of these categories to apply under. It doesn't matter. It's all the same as far as the points go within there. So those are the priority points that you can have. The administrator under this has a chance to award up to 10 points per year for categories. This year they're doing persistent poverty counties and energy counties within there, and there's a list on the application. And in some ways it's an easier one than it has in past years. So look at the application, type in your zip code for the 3 different charts they have, and it will tell you whether you're eligible for those points or not. There also are points awarded if you're in an area of new grants and other things. Unfortunately, with South Carolina being very successful in winning them, South Carolina isn't going to get, you know, regional points because we've won a lot of grants in the past. We've been too successful to win those points. But like I say, for the administrator points, type in your address, and it's usually, you know, like I say, areas of need. Charleston doesn't apply, but a lot of the folks, you know, east of or west of 95 to you know, Columbia in that corridor apply. But just type in your address. They have the three different charts that you look things up or in the application. So just type those in, put in your zip code, and you will qualify or not. So that makes it easier this year for the priority points on that. But there are no priority points for a specific crop or a specific type of project. Excuse me a second. And then just scoring, and I'm going to hit it in general. I know V's going to go over the budget in a moment, but you know, the best application, tell a little bit of a story about what's going on while you're answering these questions. You know, let the reviewer get a chance to know what makes your project successful, what has happened with it, you know, and more importantly, tell them how you be successful, you know, with these funds once the grant is done. You know, how you're going to grow, how you're going to employ more people, how you're creating jobs in an area of distressed communities and making new markets within there. The reviewers are going to be people who are hired by USDA. They have to clear sort of a technical level to be there. There's one reviewer from South Carolina, typically V, within there. There are two other reviewers, and the only thing that they have to be is they can't be from South Carolina, and they have to be declared in the pool as far as having general technical knowledge about agriculture and value-added types of products. However, that can make them a farmer that knows a lot about growing, you know, potato chips and absolutely nothing about selling pork. So, you know, for example, or they know wines, but they don't know anything about selling alpaca fiber. So, you know, and you just don't know who they're going to be. So don't use a lot of technical jargon. We have so much jargon in ag, you know, and I will make the example of it. Don't use the euphemism, for example, of saying we're going to go slaughter our animals or we're going to process them, you know, oh, we're processing this. Well, what does it mean? Well, processing means we're, you know, we're killing Porky and he's not coming back except as pork chops, right? But be very specific without that and don't use this type of jargon we use. Be careful with acronyms because I will say, as having been a reviewer in the past, by the time you're on about the fourth one of these grants in about a 2-day period, the acronyms all start to blur in your head. And you can't remember, was GAP M for this project? Was it for another project? So be very careful with using acronyms because reviewers can get confused. So be careful with that. I mentioned the budget carefully, and V's going to go over. Just make sure again that it adds up. You know, show details as much as you can. And we talked about this, but you know, send it through a spelling correction. Have people double check to make sure the grammar works. You know, use Grammarly. Use one of these programs to make sure within there. You know, I would say at this point in time, don't use an AI program to write the grant because it's pretty obvious when someone's using AI, and usually they're not very good as of yet. But I will let you decide on that one. But those are sort of what makes it stronger, and then the sort of the weaker ones are basically the opposite of that. So you know, in a weaker application, you know, a weaker application doesn't do those things within there. You know, you're not going through and checking with it. You have obvious errors. You have leaps of thought that don't make sense to the reviewer, or you're bouncing from one thing or another. You say that you have no competition in the market, because I can tell you every agricultural product has some type of competition. These are the sort of things that are going to get the reviewers to knock you down and not show it. You don't bring in the people that you're working with or your support from the community. And I think with that, Jim, I think I'm done. And I always talk about it, like I say, the crystal ball rule. If the reviewer had a crystal ball, they'd be sitting on the beach drinking probably something out of a, that has an umbrella in it. So try to make it simple and clear where they're going with it. And I always say, hold on to the application, keep a copy of it. Don't leave it all on your computer, save it somewhere else, because your computer will get hit by lightning a week before the grant's due, and then you won't know what you had. I always score when you get your grant back, because, and I tell people to think about it as a 2-year process. And you may not win the first year, but use that as a chance to review your application, fix the problems you have, and submit a second time. So I always tell people, if you're going to apply for this, it's so much work, plan on the fact that it could take you 2 years to win it.
Yep. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate it. I think, yeah, don't give up for sure, because there's definitely some that maybe they just didn't get everything they needed to get together either. But if you got 70-80% of it, you might not have made this deadline, but keep all that, for the next year, and try again. All right,
And I will say that, of course, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw with reviewers. You may just have a reviewer that doesn't like your project area. They, for some reason, just may hate meats, whatever it is. And so it's always good to go back that second time and look at that, because you are getting the luck of draw with reviewers.
Yeah, this is true. Okay. I know we have a question. We have a question about matching funds again. But I guess just to reiterate on matching is, it's a reimbursable grant. And so you have to spend the money first, and then you get a receipt for your expenditure. And then you submit those receipts to USDA for reimbursement, and that's when you get the 50% back, basically.
And
So,
Jimmy, also the matching funds have to be eligible. So you cannot match because you invested in equipment or buildings. Matching funds will be eligible related to processing and marketing the value-added products.
right. And we'd be happy to talk to you more about matching. If you have any more questions about that later, if you can reach out to one of us. I did want to, we're getting into Ms. Gartman's presentation on the budget. I did just want to kind of scroll through a little bit of show you a brief introduction to the toolkit if you hadn't seen it. So yeah, if you come down here and a lot of the stuff that we've mentioned, you can see where, you're gonna have to fill out this basic information here, summary information, checking boxes. These are the priority point boxes that will initially be checked, but you'll see that again later in the grant. And then this whole section 3, you get into the eligibility requirements to try to determine eligibility, right? And they're going to ask you some questions you're going to have to answer here too. It's a pretty long section as far as just content there. You're not basically, you're not filling out all these parts, just whatever applies to you. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's kind of self-explanatory once you get into it. You do know you're going to need to know about the quantities of crop that you're producing for the project. So it'll be good to understand your yields and what you've been selling and things like that, and how much of that you'll be contributing to the project. More on eligibility. And then you're going to get into some narrative that you'll have to write and answering these questions. And you can see, like, for example, this first question, it says discuss the estimated expansion of customer base resulting from the value-added product, including a baseline of current customers for the commodity or value-added product, and estimated target number of customers that will result from the project. So as Jim stated, and I talked about a little bit earlier, you need to answer each one of these little, if it's asking you something, you need to answer each one of these segments here. So make sure that you're thorough in making sure that when you look at that, it's telling you to discuss this and that you hit all these points. And each section is a little bit like that. And you can kind of break it out. You might can take one section and make that the header so that they can see, okay, this is about the target number of customers that will result in the project. Just make it very simple and easy for the reviewer to digest it. And let's see, still more selections here. What type of project? And then we're going to get down to a budget summary area. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to you, Ms. Gartman.
Okay. So in the budget section, you have two tables. The number one table, it asks you basically about the activity. So in this first table, you will put the name of your activities. The standard two ones, it will be processing, value-added product, and number two, it will be marketing, sales and marketing. But please notice that they ask you for the task name, description, and responsible party. So you will have to put activity number one, processing value-added product, and you will have to put your name, whoever will be responsible for implementation of this task. Now, the start date always will have to be October 1st, 2024. We basically never got the results or were able to sign the grant agreement before October 1st. So this would be very safe to include October 1st. Now the end date, the best it will be to put September 30th, 2027. Now, even if you finish your project within 2 years, it's still okay to apply for 3 years because there's no penalty. You can finish project within 1 or 2 years. But if you only put 1 year, then I will be able only to renew for another year. So it's the best to put September 30th, 2027. Now, here we have value-added grant funds. So, for example, if you're applying for 50,000 and you will need 40,000 for processing, then you will put here 40,000. But now 40,000 represents only 50% because the total project cost, if you apply for 50,000, will be 100. Therefore, we need matching funds. And now you have a choice. You can put 50,000 cash matching funds, or you could put 25,000 cash matching funds and 25,000 in kind. In this case, remember, you will get 2 points. The maximum points for matching funds is 4 points. If you have a combination of cash and in kind, you will receive 2 points. So task number one, processing. Again, you will have to include the name of the person. Task number two, marketing and sales. So for marketing and sales, well, what I noticed last year, they were deducting points if your start and end date were the same. Therefore, marketing, usually what you will do, you maybe hire somebody to do the website for you. So you could put like starting date, maybe June 2025, and how long it will take, 6 months, and then put December 2025 end date. So this way they will not deduct those points. So now I don't know how much you will need. If you will need 10,000, then we can put 10,000 grant funds. And again, you could put 10,000 or, but in this case, even if you put 10,000 cash, you still will get only 2 points because you will not have 50% matching funds. So it's really up to you. So the total project cost in this case is 120,000. So 60,000 will come from grant funds, 35 cash, and 25 matching funds. And like Jim emphasized, they will check those numbers so sure that everything adds up. So now we have the second table. So we will have to provide expenditures and money needed to implement processing tasks. So here's the table again. We have 50,000 available from grant funds for processing. So this 50,000, basically we can spread and have some funds for personnel, for travel, supplies, contractual, and other. Now, whatever you put, if you put, for example, 20,000 for personnel, again, we need to know if this will be in-kind match or cash match. Now, it is very important that you provide supporting documentation for each category of expenditure. For personnel, for example, if you hire somebody just to work part-time for you, you can go to Department of Labor and print salaries for farm workers. And then each category will have to be explained below the table. So again, if you need 20,000 for personnel, below the table, you will type personnel, and you will type, we are going to hire a part-time employee that will work 20 hours per week. We will pay him $20 per hour, etc. And then you will put the whole amount that will have to match basically 20,000 plus the matching funds, so it will be 40,000. And at the end, you will say personnel expenditure will be 40,000. However, 20,000 will come from grant funds, and 20,000 it will be matching funds. Now, for travel, you will be able to request reimbursement funds for your travel expenditures. So all the travel related to processing, marketing, selling your value-added product. Currently, the GSA rate is 67 cents per mile. So again, you can go to GSA and provide the printout from the GSA stating that mileage reimbursement rate is 67 cents per mile. And below the table, you will have to, again, below the table, you will have to type travel and explain, I'm going to deliver travel to the farmer's market 2 times per week. I'm going to travel to the 5 restaurants 5 times per week. So you will calculate the mileage multiplied by 67 cents, and this will give you the idea of how much funds do you need in this category. Do not put anything in equipment, office equipment, as this grant does not allow funds for equipment. However, if an item costs less than 5,000, you can include in supplies. So with the grant funds, you can purchase refrigerator, laptops, all the boxes, jars, whatever you need to process, market, and sell your product. And again, below the table, you will type supplies, and you will calculate how many boxes you will order, or how many refrigerators you will purchase. And again, it's very, very important. You will score higher if you provide supporting documentation. So everything, all this supporting documentations, invoices, pictures of boxes, or other items, you will include in Appendix C. However, it will be very good if below this table, you will say that we included the copy of supplies with the prices in Appendix C, because many times reviewers, if you don't tell them that you included copies of those supplies in the Appendix C, they might deduct points because they will not go and check. But if you tell them, hey, we do have copies of invoices, copies of different items that we are planning to purchase, then they will not deduct points. Contractual, if you hire somebody to develop website, you will have kind of contract with them. If you don't know who will be the person or the firm doing this, you can just Google include kind of a sample how much they charge to develop a website. And again, you will have to include this information in your budget calculation. If you are beef producer and you process your beef at one of the processing facilities, you will probably have some old invoices from the processing facility. So you could include those and once calculating how much you need for contractual expenditures. Now, if there are some expenses and they are not listed here, they are not for personnel or travel, please include those in other category. And for example, all your utilities, electric bill, water bill, cell phone bill, internet, those could be included in other. And again, you will have to type other and explain how you're going to utilize those funds. Now, if you do not include your expenses in this budget and they are not approved, I won't be able to reimburse you for those. It happened that few of the farmers decided to lease the vehicle as they didn't want to use their own, or maybe, it broke. Well, if you didn't include this in your budget, that is really, I cannot reimburse you for this expense. For example, if you need to process your vegetables and you go to commercial kitchen, I can reimburse for those expenses, but again, please include those expenses under contractual. Now, with supplies, we discussed this before. If you don't produce sufficient agricultural commodity and you would like to purchase additional like vegetables or maybe beef from your neighboring farmers, we could reimburse under categories for that expenditure. But please remember that 51% of the commodity needed for the project must be produced by you, by agriculture, basically by your farm. So you can purchase 49% of the commodity needed. And I have lots of farmers that basically do request funds to purchase additional cows or other commodity. Now you will have to repeat this table for each task. So initially we discussed that we are going to have 2 tasks, then the same table you will have to copy and paste and then provide expenditures for marketing task. So in marketing task, you might not have personnel or travel or supplies, but you might have a contract with the somebody who will do the develop a website for you. So you will put this under a contractual expenses. And I guess that's it. The other thing I would like to emphasize, please do not include any ineligible expenses. because they will disqualify you. If you are not sure, please please ask me, email me or Jim, because this is one of the reasons that lots of applicants got rejected. What else? Try to include everything that you would like to have grant funds to pay for those expenses. Do not forget mileage, because then do not forget like supplies. Even in supplies, even if you don't, even you don't list like every item that you're going to purchase, that's okay. Or we can then change, and you can tell me, hey, I'm not buying the refrigerator anymore. I'm going to purchase something else. It's okay. But as long as I have supplies categories and I have the amount for the supplies category, then I will be able to work with you and reimburse you for those expenses. Do not buy eligible before consulting with me, because again, some items are not eligible. Do not purchase anything that costs $5,000 or more, because it's not eligible. All supplies will have to be related to processing, storing, marketing, and selling your agricultural products. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, V. I think I'm just gonna scroll through real quickly the rest of the application, and then we'll do some question and answers. But this, so Jim Matson mentioned section 6, the evaluation criteria. This is where you start the scoring. They could take the other sections into consideration, but this is where the scoring typically starts. And you can see here, they ask you questions. You're going to need substantiated answers for these questions. I'm not going to go too deep into these, but this is each section's kind of headed with the number of points that allocates to that section. So this is the nature of the proposed venture, 30 points, the big section. You see all the questions here. These need to be answered thoroughly, as we suggested. Gives you a little kind of a rubric here, as well as how the points are allocated. Yeah, if you didn't address any of the criteria up here, you'd get 0 points for that section. All the way up to 23 to 30 is a written section that addressed everything and had supporting third-party information. And there's a section here on project personnel, where you talk about the folks that work for you and people that are supporting the project in their background. The third party support letters, it's 10 points here. Commitments and support. So you can see where it breaks it down, these 3 different sections. You can get 2 points each here, and a level of commitments up to 4 points. So these are where your letters of support are coming. And then V just went over the work plan and budget. There's 20 points in this section. And like she mentioned, you'd have to have those charts down here, and then a clear substantiation of each expense in each budget item. And then you get into priority points and so forth and so on. These are our contacts. Put V at the top there. She's the person that you'll be submitting the application to. And then myself and Jim Matson, Kyle Player, Steve Richards, and Brian Wheat. If you ever need to get in touch with us, this is our email address, and we'll send these out. But happy to to help, and our main goal is just that we get South Carolina farms funded, and get this money to South Carolina to help our growers be more successful, and that's what we're here to help you do. So at this point, I will open it up for questions, and if you want to unmute and ask a question, that's fine, or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. there is a question in the chat. I'll go ahead and ask that one. It says, I usually pay 100% of expenses, but not from cash in hand, but from cash earned from sales and then reinvested on a weekly basis. How would I show this as cash match without a current balance in the bank? Well, I mean, different ways you can show cash match is just a bank statement. And and it needs to be within 30 days of the grant due date, I think.
Yes.
And so however much money you have in the bank account at that time, savings account, retirement account, any type of accounts where the assets of the account, or you can liquidate it within a certain period of time, a reasonable amount of time, under 1 year probably is current asset. But yeah, so like a retirement account, you can, right? So those are all cash matches. Outside of that, you can get a bank if you have a line of credit, or if you want to go out and get a bank loan from an ag lender, conventional lender, farm service agency, you would submit the letter saying that you were approved for X amount of money, or you've been approved for X amount of a line of credit, and then you can use that as a cash match. So it doesn't necessarily have to be cash in the bank, but it has to be access to that cash. So you have to be it's got to be easily accessible. Any other ways I'm missing on how to show the cash match?
Yes, Jimmy, I had clients submitting like copies of their statements from 401k, for example, from their wife or even somebody in the family. But I also have clients that will submit copies of the statements from the credit card company, from like different ones that will come together to the needed matching required. So there are different ways, basically. You can also submit a statement from the third party, like, again, family member, that they are going to give you the needed matching funds. And there's a special form from the third party matching funds.
Yeah, that third party cash match is kind of like
Yeah.
your family members extending credit to
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
then they're, documenting that, kind of like a bank authorization letter would
Yeah.
be.
V, there was a question about using product as match.
Yes. So there are three different ways to provide matching funds. Like you can have 100% cash, or you can have 25% labor and 25% matching, however, the value of the inventory. You are limited to 25% if you're using in-kind labor match. However, you can use 100% in-kind inventory, the value of your beef that you're the cows that you will be using as a main agricultural commodity. However, please remember there'll be 0 points for that. So even if you don't have 100% cash, I would encourage everyone maybe to have a combination, 25% cash and 25% in kind, because at least this way you will get 2 points.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's, those are just the rules that the USDA set. And you lose points, which doesn't necessarily mean you might not get the grant. It reduces your chances.
Yeah. Last year I did have a small farmer. He had only 5,000 cash, for which he didn't get any points. So the rest was in-kind labor and in-kind inventory. He got funded, but it was a risk.
And
And we agreed. I think we all agree that if you had the money, you probably wouldn't need the grant in the first place, and it's just one of those rules that is not one of the easiest ones.
And Farm Service Agency has some good programs for, new and beginning farmers and other folks to, FSA is, they're a lender of last resort, and they're a federal USDA program. But yeah, if you go to like Ag South or a conventional lender and they turn you down for one reason or another, then you can come over to FSA. They have a lot of programs where they may be able to extend credit or offer you a loan. In these situations, them understanding that you're applying for this grant too. So if you did all the business planning for this grant, and you could use that, to apply for your loans as well. So yeah, unfortunately,
And you don't, I'm sorry, you don't have to pay for, if you show that you're doing it out of the 401k, it doesn't mean you're going to pay for your operations out of the 401k.
No.
Everyone is using future sales is what happens. You just can't use that as part of the actual match.
Yeah, in the grant, you're just showing you have access to these funds. You're not actually spending those specific funds that you're, putting in as documentation for your match. Like Jim said, you're getting reimbursement, so you're spending out of your operating capital, as you go, and then you're getting reimbursed.